of their marketing, but they're working on stuff like legislation to get the definition of mead set, and also to get the rules changed so that mead isn't sort of being unfairly. Mead is taxed like way worse than ciders and beers, and so they enjoy like a much broader playing field than we have. So they're trying to get that playing field leveled somewhat, so that we have an easier way to expand mead to the masses and getting it out there. There's a lot of new member services. They're also working with the University of California, Davis, and the Robert Mondavi Institute to offer classes in home and professional mead making, as well as running a meadery, and there's experts behind the scenes there at the Holy Grail of fermentation to start to really dig into what makes mead tick. How, what's really happening back there? What is honey really, when you take it apart, what are its components, and how can we optimize that so we can make the best meads possible? So the AMMA set on changing the mead world, and honestly, I think they're off to a pretty good start. So guys, welcome to the show. Again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
But with your other hats on this time, so.
Yep.
So I want to hear from you guys. What is? I mean, I'm in on the meetings and I hear what you're talking about that. But what do you guys see as the big goal here? I know it's mainly. Well, I don't know maybe I don't know. You tell me. What's the main goals here that you really want to see happen over the next, say, 5 years?
So I want to see mead become a mainstream beverage, so that it's not something that is considered for Renaissance fairs, that not every news article that talks about mead goes into it's the ancient beverage. It just becomes a little more common knowledge, and that it becomes, in the mainstream. So, if you look at the American Mead Maker Association board, I think we won, what was it, Sergio, 29 medals just this past weekend.
29 total.
Yep. I saw that. That was pretty cool.
And that's out of 11 members on the board. And, and that's pretty ridiculous, which is, there is a small group of people that can make exceptional mead, and we're all working very hard to share that knowledge so that everybody can make great mead and bring it to the next level. And the more of us that can make exceptional meads on a consistent basis, the more of us that are, all of us are going to win at the end. So yes, the tax rates on mead is substantially higher than it would be for beer or cider.
When you say substantially higher, what does that really look like? I think a lot of people out there probably have no idea.
So beer taxes are essentially flat. So they never have a cost of living increase to them. They've been 30 cents a gallon for a long, long time. And here in New Hampshire, for example, the tax rate on wine is 5% of sales. So that means that there's an automatic cost of living increase to that. So anytime we increase our sales price, state of New Hampshire gets an extra 5%. Now, when we sell a bottle of Utopian number 9, Vicki, I think you can comment on this is heavenly nectar of the gods. We're paying, upwards of 60 times more tax rate on that bottle or gallon of Utopian than we would sell if we were making beer.
Okay, so it's seriously significant. And does mead then tax like wine, or is it in a class all by itself?
So it's not in a class by itself. It's taxed like wine, but mead is closer to beer in that you make beer from water and hops and malts, and you make wine from yeast and the ingredient. But when you make mead, you also use water. And so, my argument to the state of New Hampshire legislators is that, what makes it closer to wine than closer to beer? It's made with honey. Because you can make honey and beer. You don't usually add honey to wine. Use water. You make water with beer. So, I'm trying to make the argument that if you're going to tax a beverage, a fermented beverage, why not tax it at the same rate? Why have a different standard?
It makes sense.
Kind of like taxing, your food. If you had a garden salad with cucumbers and tomatoes, charging a cucumber for one fee and a tomato for another fee.
I like that. That's a really good analogy. I don't know that I think that would make sense to, well, maybe the people who are making those decisions. I wonder how much of this is just lack of knowledge on their part.
Well, there's a ton of lack of knowledge.
I hate to be devil's advocate, but if I'm making a mead that doesn't involve, or a wine that doesn't involve grapes, I do use a lot of water. So I would think it should be more on the alcohol level rather than the contents.
Let's play devil's advocate with that statement.
That's fair.
Somebody like Sam Adams that makes a 23% beer still pays 30 cents a gallon.
Okay, that's fair. I'm Canadian, so I'm not sure exactly how all your tax laws work. I know ours are completely different, and probably equally weird.
I think the simplest thing would be just to abolish any kind of taxes. How about that?
I like Sergio's idea. Just stop taxing it altogether. It's too complicated.
Oh yeah, that would be lovely, but that doesn't work. The government needs its cut, or else they're not going to let us do it at all, right?
But even if they were to change the tax rate, it would be
double enthusiasm.
Just in the New Hampshire model, there's 23 wineries in the entire state of New Hampshire. The amount of wine that's produced by those 23 wineries produces, I think, about $100,000 a year in taxes, is what the state of New Hampshire says. Now, if you were to tax us at the wine rate or at the beer ratio, you're looking at 30 cents a gallon for what we sell here in New Hampshire, and they're worried about losing that $100,000. They could increase the wine or the tax to 31 cents a gallon across the spectrum for beer and wine, and all that lost revenue is made up. You can't split a penny between 24 bottles to get, or 12 bottles to get your gallon and raise that rate for consumers. It's just not going to happen. There'll be some, 2-cent raise for every case. I think the American population can cover that, in which we lower their wine fees in the state of New Hampshire.
Well, and that raises an interesting question. If the laws were magically tomorrow to be at the 30 cents a gallon that they're charging for beer, would you produce more?
Yes, absolutely. I'd fire another employee. I pay $10,000 a year in taxes just to the state of New Hampshire, just for the privilege of making it. So, I could certainly look into moving my winery to some other location, but then I'm going to lay off my entire staff. I was born and raised here in New Hampshire. It's called the live free or die state. They never said it was the tax-free or, screw the winemaker or mead maker.
Well, we don't know that wasn't what they were thinking, but I kind of doubt it when they set it up, since the folks that set up New Hampshire were big drinkers themselves,
Probably just someone saw an excuse for profit.
We pay 6 cents a gallon for the cider. So it's 30 cents for beer, 6 cents for cider, and 5% of sales for wine.
That's just so strange that it's so different. And the thing that gets me is it seems likely that if they were to change the law so that it was a flat rate, whatever that might be, that increased volume and sales, and not to mention additional hiring of employees who themselves would be paying taxes and whatnot, would more than make up for the loss of the previous way of doing it.
But see, here's where the world's tilted, right? So when you come to the legislators in your state today and you try to talk to them about this, they say, well, we don't want to even the playing field for you, because these big companies have gotten the field tilted so much that they can be so successful. There's a Budweiser plant 15 miles from my house. They produce millions of gallons of beer a year.
Crazy.
My winery produced 20,000 gallons last year. Total, and that's what we sold worldwide. We're not even a drop in the waistline of their system.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here in Jersey. Yeah, I'm about 18 or 20 miles from the Newark Anheuser-Busch plant. And they got a strong hold on the state. And when you get into, regulations state-wise, now you got 50 states to worry about. The federal level is a whole other animal that the AMMA is trying to focus on, basically getting mead a more refined definition of of exactly what mead is and how it's treated and how it can be labeled and what we can say on the labels without with TTB basically being there mainly to approve our labels to make sure that we're being, extremely clear and not misleading the consumer as to what's in the bottle. They sure as hell make it a hard time for us to do that in a lot of cases when it comes to labeling mead as well.
Right, and if you try to describe something on your label, like I made the one I started my company with, which is blackcurrant blueberry black cherry mead, and I originally thought I was going to call it a triple berry mellow, and they got back to me and said cherry's not a berry and you can't say that, and I said okay, so we called it Desire instead, and then I said, well, the berry-like flavors of this, the fruits give it this kind of complexity, and they said, well, you're not using berry flavoring, you can't use that on the label. I'm like, I'm not saying I use berry flavors. I'm trying to use an adjective or a descriptor of what I was trying to do. So, the mead makers today, what we're learned as a body, we're giving that information back. You join the American Mead Maker Association, you get on that website. Sergio's giving tips out there. I've been giving tips on how to make progress, and as many others. And, the community knowledge base is growing.
Cool. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, especially when you consider the association for what it is. You kind of compare it to, like, other organizations, like, let's say, the AHA. You don't really see too many professional brewers going on there and giving, like, amateurs advice, or people who are looking to start their own brewery any advice, directly, or have the capability to ask any of those professional brewers that you'd love to hear an answer from. Anything, directly at all. The AMMA is pretty unique in that respect where, we're all there. Just talking about the board of directors, like Michael said, we won 29 medals at the Mazer Cup on the commercial side of things. There's a really valuable resource there for people that are just making mead at home, that are trying to get some, answers, or somebody that's looking to start a meadery or already started a meadery that's trying to, figure out how to rectify an issue that they're having, or trying to figure out what kind of pump is going to be best to purchase. Anything big or small. There's a ton of people there that are, waiting to basically answer questions and willing to answer any question.
Yeah, we're starting to get our first trade members too. I've got some backlog of trade members actually trying to join up and become members to offer, discounts and supplies to, homemade makers and commercial mead makers. So, we've grown by, I think, a factor of 400% from last year to this year in membership dues and active members in the organization. And, we don't even think we've hit the median at this point.
Oh, yeah. Well,
there's nowhere even close.
Yeah, there's
nowhere even close. I think
300 meaderies just in the United States, and God knows how many home mead makers out there. I can't even begin to count. I wouldn't even know how to figure that out.
Yeah, we've had some good conversations with folks, and what we're trying to do for going forward, where, we're trying to look at getting a conference put together. The Mead for Your Diet, which is taking place at the end of April, is a competition where we use the proceeds to benefit the American Mead Maker Association. And you get a lot of great feedback from those types of competitions. So, it's such a, I don't want to say the word buzz. It's such a exciting time for all of us in the industry to move this to the next level. And we need some help. We have plenty of work to be done, and that's where we're trying to coordinate what members can do to help the organization and take it to the next level.
You mentioned a conference, so tell me more about that. Are we talking like AHA for mead, or what's the thought here?
Yeah, basically, I think the whole idea is like something like that. It's basically like an NHC for mead,
okay, if
you would. Presentations, definitely a night where commercial and amateur mead makers could pour their wares. We'll have vendors showcasing new equipment and supplies and whatnot. If you think of it as kind of like an NHC for mead, that's kind of what we're planning. And this is all basically